Hey guys, so recently CNBC released a video about NASCAR, sort of chronicling the rise and fall of the sport, which it's called the rise and fall of NASCAR. Now, they got a lot of stuff right with this, but at the same time they also got some things wrong, and I think I'd like to clear it up so that people who might not know as much about the sport don't get something wrong about it or think something differently than what it really is. So I'm going to show you just a few clips of it. Some of it is right, some of it's wrong, and then we're going to sort of go over it as we go.
So, what went so wrong with NASCAR? It's partly to do with the fact that it's alienated its core stock car racing fan. In a bid to attract a new kind of audience, NASCAR moved into trendier markets in the 90s. NASCAR built super speedways in Las Vegas and Southern California and shut down some classic venues in America's southern states.
So it's no secret from just about anyone you ask, they'll tell you that NASCAR's origin was in the South. Now, it doesn't matter if it's someone who's been a diehard their whole life or somebody who's never even watched a race. That's what the public and generally the mainstream understands about the sport. And CNBC gets it right here, for sure. For instance, they talk about how they moved to trendier markets like Southern California and Las Vegas while moving away from southern tracks. Now, while they don't list these, many fans, or at least longtime fans of the sport, would know that they're talking about tracks like North Wilkesboro and Rockingham. Now, this is a big thing because not all NASCAR fans are from the South, but a big majority of the fans of NASCAR, especially the core fans and longtime fans, come from the South.
NASCAR also tinkered with its race format multiple times over the years.
But then the manufacturers started to see that this was really a way to prove their cars in an area that people loved cars at. So in the 60s, especially in 70s, you started seeing manufacturers racing their own cars and supporting teams. And back then, a stock car was really much more of a stock car.
Now this clip brings another, actually more than another, good point to light of NASCAR's rise and fall. Now, first they do a brief mentioning of how the sport tinkered with the race format. I think this is to talk about both the race itself as well as the championship with the chase, and then now with the race itself with stage points and getting rid of like laps led bonus points, stuff like that, which for this kind of video is really something that is worth only about one sentence. But the big thing here is talking about how the manufacturers in the 60s and 70s saw this as a basically win on Sunday, sell on Monday, where that came from, that little that saying. What NASCAR fans today need to understand, especially older fans, is it's never going to get back to that. They're never going to have actual real stock cars like they used to. Like, they've gone too far down the road now that they're strictly race cars. There's nothing really stock about them. They're not this. A Ford Fusion on the track nowadays is not the same Ford Fusion you're going to buy at a dealership. Same goes for a Camaro. A Camaro you see on the track might look like the Camaro that's in the showroom, but that's about it. It just looks like it. And that's one big thing that I think NASCAR fans, like I said, especially the older ones, need to understand, is that we're never going to get back to the true win on Sunday, sell on Monday sort of deal. Because I think that also brings up something a little bigger that people don't understand, or I won't say don't understand, but more don't think about, is that nowadays car guys aren't really a thing as much, especially with newer generations, especially with millennials and Gen Z and even Gen Xers to a degree. I mean, when I bring up the term car guy, who do you think of? You probably think of, an older uncle of yours, a grandfather, someone older, someone who grew up working on cars, compared to nowadays where generations nowadays see cars as just point A to point B. And that's something that while some people talk about it, they don't go into truly the amount of in-depth look at it and what effect that has on racing as a whole. Because racing as a whole across the board the last decade or so has really been falling, or at least steadily going downhill when it comes to popularity. It's not just NASCAR. It's that NASCAR is the biggest way of showing this. They've had the biggest fall over the shortest amount of time.
And then there was that infamous car redesign in 2007. The car of tomorrow was a lot less noisy and safer.
Now, the car of tomorrow is something that NASCAR fans as a whole, when it comes to racing, don't like at all. And That's something that I don't think has been very hidden over the last 10 years or so. But something that was said in here kind of brought my attention a little bit to it and sort of took me out of the video was they said the cars were both less noisy and safer. Now, it's true that they were safer. They are the biggest leap in safety for any car generation in NASCAR history to go from. But the less noisy part really isn't true. All the car tomorrow was really a new body. Everything under the hood for the most part was the same. Granted, over time it's changed, but there really wasn't much of a difference in the sound when you're at the track. And the only reason that the sound on TV is different from the old Gen 4 cars was because they changed the way the exhaust system was. That had nothing to do really with the car tomorrow as a whole. It was just one thing they changed on top of changing the bodies.
But less high-speed pileups and more single-file racing just didn't play well with fans.
This is another part of the video where CNBC gets it half right and half true. Now, while it's true that the fans didn't like the more single-file racing that was brought with the car of tomorrow, even though it really, in hindsight, wasn't as bad as we like to make it out to be, the Gen 6 is much worse at this, they also brought up something that is a huge misconception for not just NASCAR fans, but really racing fans across the board, is that they wanted more pileups and that the car tomorrow brought less. And while yes, the car tomorrow really didn't have as many crashes as like in the era of the Gen 4, one, there still were plenty of amazing crashes. I would like to show you Carl Edwards in 2009 at Talladega. But on top of that, racing fans for the most part don't go to the track to see cars crash. They go to see them race. Side-by-side racing, racing for the win, racing for position from lap 1 to lap 500. It doesn't matter. That's what they go there to see.
It also streamlined the look of rival cars, again subduing fan fervor. All that, together with the Great Recession and the rise of cord cutting, has taken its toll on NASCAR. Spectators, and more worryingly, sponsors, have jumped ship, like Target, which ended 16 years of NASCAR sponsorship in 2017.
Now, while fans might get annoyed with Brian France and executives saying that the Great Recession was the reason and still is the reason for NASCAR's fall, I will say from about the years of 2007 to 2010, the Great Recession probably is the biggest reason for NASCAR's fall. Because NASCAR fans, unlike most sports fans, are generally lower income, which means it's going to be harder for them to watch. And like this video says, they probably cut cords with their cable. They probably got rid of cable and are only having the local channels. That's a really, really big majority of the fans that probably were cut out in that point. And you see it reflected in the TV ratings. While it's not as prevalent in 2008 and 2009, and even the start of 2008 had a huge increase in people watching. You really see it from 2009 to 2010 as they had a huge drop. Now, I don't think that's the reason anymore. I don't think you can really blame it, seeing how the economy for a long time now has been on the upswing. But that is one big reason for NASCAR's fall.
At one point, it attracted more money from more Fortune 500 companies than any other sports or entertainment property in America. AP reports that at its peak, a top team might spend $30 million to run a race car, with sponsorship money funding most of that. But now, some owners say they're getting half of what they used to 15 years ago. And NASCAR teams aren't just losing sponsors, they're also slashing the going rate to advertise.
And, like they said, I think this sort of snowballed over time because NASCAR wasn't prepared for this. And you see it like they showed in longtime sponsors like Target leaving. And then even this year, NASCAR's 7-time champion Jimmy Johnson losing Lowe's. That is a huge, huge sign that things are not completely right with NASCAR. This huge, long sponsorship with the most successful driver since probably Jeff Gordon in the late 90s or Dale Earnhardt in the early 90s and late 80s is leaving. Like that's something that's really big and can't be ignored. Now with this fall with the sport, that also brings on the challenge that they're going to have to cut spending like they show in the video. How back in the day, $30 million a year for a car was normal for a team to put out. Nowadays, with it having to be about half that, NASCAR is still not adjusted completely to the fact that they're not as big as they were before, and that's another reason that they're falling. Even back when it was really successful, people were calling for there to be less races, and while people at the time thought that was insane because of how popular the sport was, nowadays that really would have helped them out a lot. So teams themselves, I think, like they were saying, have adjusted more, seeing how they've slashed the rates of sponsorship. And I think this brings up a point that Humpy Wheeler used to talk about a lot, and he even said on YouTube about, is that there needs to be less of a rate to go into the sport. They need to spend less money. Now with this, with having to cut sponsorship, that obviously means they're going to be spending less money.
NASCAR is notoriously closed-mouthed about its earnings, making it difficult to gauge the financial fallout of NASCAR's fading popularity. The league has been privately owned by the France family since its start, but now they're apparently looking to ditch their majority stake.
So like the video said, and like most NASCAR fans probably know, the Frances are looking to get rid of their majority ownership of the sport of NASCAR, really their total ownership of it. I think this is a little misleading, and I'll go a little more in depth with it probably in another video. But the France family also owns a majority of the tracks on the schedule, which have some pretty big ones in there, like Daytona, Talladega, Martinsville, along with a host of others. So while they might be getting rid of the majority ownership in the sport, they're really not getting rid of as much power because they still have the dictation over the schedule.
Nobody knows exactly how much NASCAR is worth, but if the International Racing League Formula One is any indicator, we're looking at something in the multi-billion-dollar range. F1 sold for $8 billion in 2016. NASCAR may be hemorrhaging fans and sponsors, but it's actually making more money doing it.
I think this is a huge miscalculation of how much NASCAR is worth. Equating it to F1, a worldwide racing organization, which probably garners between 200 to 300 million viewers across the world, to NASCAR, which probably gets, on average, between 2 and 7 million viewers a week in America, is really bad in my opinion. While I think that NASCAR will probably sell for around the same rate, maybe, I would say maybe half of it to 2/3 of it, to say that putting F1 as the base for what NASCAR would go as is probably something that's really silly.
To be clear, TV ratings have taken a beating. The Wall Street Journal reported that NASCAR's television viewership is down 45% since its peak in 2005. The sport has lost more than a third of its viewers, but a JP Morgan analyst says NASCAR still saw a 46% increase in its average annual TV revenue.
So yes, while TV ratings are about half of what they used to be, NASCAR still makes more money. But that's more because the network's overpaid. Like is said in this video, I think later on, NASCAR is a live sporting event. And nowadays, with the dying media that is television, they need live events. They need that event that's going to bring people in. So while they might be making more money, I think it's really something that's misleading to how healthy the sport is.
What helps NASCAR's bottom line, it may also just be a reflection of the rising value of live sports. Live events are TV's bread and butter, so even though there's less eyeballs, the value of them is higher than ever, especially for an established brand like NASCAR.
Those eyeballs are worth more, but the fact of the matter is TV is a dying medium. It's going the way of radio. And in the next 10 to 20 years, it will be obsolete.
And NASCAR remains optimistic. The company says nearly half of Fortune 100 companies invest in NASCAR, an 11% year-over-year increase.
And this is quite good. NASCAR needs to understand that it needs to downsize, and it needs to do it a little bit more quickly than it has been, and this is a great step. So, again, it's not all doom and gloom.
It's also seen a big appetite for its digital video content. Forbes recently reported that NASCAR's digital platform saw a 58% rise in video views, and NASCAR Fantasy Live players are up 135%.
And this is the big reason why I decided to make this video, is because it goes along with one of the last videos I made. NASCAR needs to get online. They right now increased, like I said, 58% in their digital media. So more people are watching online, more people are live streaming. And this is with NASCAR not even putting effort into it. And the reason I think this is happening, along with the 135% increase in NASCAR Fantasy Live players, is because NASCAR is starting to attract a younger audience again. Most of the people that are going to be watching this are subscribed to me. You know, younger people watch NASCAR, maybe not in the numbers that make it the most relevant sport compared to, again, the NFL or the NBA, but it is growing. This medium of showing the race is growing at a large rate. Now, granted, the numbers are really small compared to other sports because they've started to put their eggs in this basket, but that doesn't mean that it's not something that NASCAR should go at and as soon as possible. The internet is the way of the future. The internet right now is the way that TV was to the radio back in the 40s and 50s. It's just pushing TV out. And NASCAR can't stay on that dying island, because it's a net gain for the networks as well, because then their online presence grows along with NASCAR, and they both help each other out, and that helps other sports out. Going to online media has nothing but benefits for every sport, and NASCAR is no exception. So I hope you enjoyed my ramblings. Some of it might not be what you might agree with, but I wanted to see if I could just have as much of an honest perspective and as much of a correct perspective as I could. If I got anything wrong, or if there's something that you think I should have covered in this video, please, by all means, leave it in the comments. I would love to see it. I probably will respond to you about it. Along with that, please leave a like on the video as well. And if you could, if you haven't already, please subscribe. That'd be pretty cool. Share the video with as many people as you can, even if they're not NASCAR fans. Maybe something in here could connect with them. Who knows? Oh, and before I forget, I will be on Black Flags Matters channel this week on this Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Central Time, and that's 8 Eastern Time, for our weekly NASCAR podcast live stream. Please be there. It's going to be great. It's always great. It's always fun. But we'd love to see you there. And with that, until next time, see you around.